This video is for any business owner, leader, or executive who wants to make better decisions themselves or to train others to make better decisions. So this is essentially a two-part book review from the book Noise, A Flaw in Human Judgment by Daniel Kahneman, Olivier, Sibony, and Sunstein. So Daniel Kahneman was the Nobel Prize winner who talked about prospect theory and loss aversion and behavioral economics, and that's what he won his Nobel Prize for. In this book, they talk about two types of error. One is bias, which is mostly focused on in Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, which I would also recommend. And then the other is noise, and that's the focus of this book. They don't ignore bias, but they focus on noise, and it is treated as entirely separate subject, which is what makes it impressive because it's on the same academic rigor and level as Thinking Fast and Slow was. It is not a light read. You're not going to listen to this casually. You have to use your brain. You have to think about it and you have to pay attention to understand what's going on. But it's a fantastic book. First of all, let's talk about this cool image here. It's inspired by an image that comes from the book, and it illustrates noise and bias in a 2x2 grid. So this gives you both sides of that. And each one of these represents a different version of stuff. So this one right here is we're throwing strawberries to feed the monkey. And if they're close, he can reach up and he can catch them with his mouth. In this one, it represents low bias or no bias and high noise. So it's centered around the center, which represents accuracy or a lack of bias, a low bias, but high noise because the distribution is pretty weak. It's a poor grouping. Over here, this monkey got fed one strawberry. This monkey here represents high noise and bias because it's distributed widely, which represents noise, and it's over to one side towards the bottom right quadrant, which represents bias. It's consistently going in a direction, and that's what makes it biased. This one here is biased and low noise. It's biased in a direction, again, to the bottom right quadrant, but it's also low noise in that the grouping's quite tight. So this poor guy got nothing. He's hungry. Now, this little monkey over here is especially happy because he was the only one who had a strawberry thrower who was really good. They had great judgment. They had low noise, tightly grouped together, and they had no bias or low bias, and therefore this monkey got fed all 5 strawberries. So that's noise and bias. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is objective ignorance. And objective ignorance is the limit of how good a judgment can possibly be. In other words, it's the very best judgment that you could possibly make with the known information. Objective ignorance, that is that which we cannot know or we do not know, that's objectively true. That's what makes it objective ignorance. It's stuff that we are ignorant of, cannot, or do not know at the time we make a judgment. So on average, human judgment by executives or HR specialists who make an estimate of how likely a candidate is, a new hire is to be good at their job and perform well, they estimate themselves to be able to get it right about 85% of the time, which is 35% above chance. That's their estimate, but the reality is far more disappointing and far less surprising. Their performance is more like 59% or only 9% above chance. That's what the actual statistics from that judgment tend to be from most human judges. A paraphrase from the book: virtually any time we make a judgment, we tend to underestimate how much we don't know. That would be that objective ignorance, or can't know when making that judgment. It's commonly known as overconfidence bias. So we're overconfident about the accuracy of our judgment, and we consistently underestimate our understanding of our own ignorance, how much we don't know, and therefore can't make the judgment based upon. This is a quote directly out of the book. Whenever there is a prediction, there is ignorance, and more than you think. The executives of a higher level or higher experience are more likely to make overconfident judgments than anyone else. And not only more overconfident judgments, but because of that, less likely to be accurate. Based on 20 years of predictions from almost 300 experts, Philip Tetlock in his book found that experts were, this is a quote, roughly as accurate as a dart-throwing chimpanzee. Next is a quote from the authors of Noise. Pundits blessed with the clear theories about how the world works were the most confident and the least accurate. Of this group of almost 300 experts. The ones who were least likely to be accurate were the ones who were most confident that they knew how the world and how their predictions would work, were the least accurate of all. Sense of understanding the world actually goes backwards. After an event happens and we know the outcome, we go, well, it's clear. I can see the breadcrumbs, the evidence that would clearly lead to the outcome that actually happened. And we tend to think of these as us seeing great insights, when in fact, it only feels predictable and coherent after the fact because it fits the narrative that causes the outcome. And it feels that predictability, yet in reality, we're rarely able to make an accurate prediction when it isn't retroactive, when it isn't going backwards. So really what it comes down to is our foresight is not 20/20, it's more like 50/50. And it's only hindsight that feels 20/20. The order in which we learn information biases us significantly in a direction. That is, if what we learn about someone or something is positive at first, then it becomes known as the halo effect, and all judgments that follow sort of get that positive glow from that halo. Everything that that person or that circumstance or that business, whatever it is, does seems better. We have a positive bias towards all information that follows the first and significantly positive information. The reverse is also true, though, and it's called the horn effect. If we first hear something that's negative about something, we tend to judge everything thereafter with a bias towards, let's call it, the shadow of the horns of that negative judgment. I have just enough time to maybe do one more, and that's the substitution bias. And this is when we have two pieces of information, and one piece of information is an easy problem to solve or an easy outcome to predict, and the other one is complex and they seem to be related. Then what we'll do is we'll look at the easy problem, we'll solve it using fast thinking system 1 and be confident that we've made an accurate prediction on system 2 when it is in fact probably not accurate. That's it. The next episode is going to be about the last few biases and things, and then how to reduce biases and noise and judgment. My name is Tim B. Green. This has been Noise Book Review, Crush It Club 184. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.